أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وهو الذي أنشأ جنات معروشات وغير معروشات والنخل والزرع مختلفا أكله والزيتون والرمان متشابها وغير متشابه كلوا من ثمره إذا أثمر وآتوا حقه يوم حصاده ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين صدق الله العظيم. We did these verses last week, but last week we only translated them. We did the meanings basically. Didn't get a chance to delve a bit deeper. So today, inshallah, we'll go back about 3-4 verses above. And with the tafsir, inshallah, we'll have another glance over them. We'll have another look at them and try and understand a bit more the implications of the Quranic words. Let us firstly connect this verse, ayah 141, with the preceding verse, which says, قَدْ خَسِرَ الَّذِينَ قَتَلُوا أَوْلَادَهُمْ سَفَهًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ وَحَرَّمُوا مَا رَزَقَهُمُ اللَّهُ افْتِرَاءً عَلَى اللَّهِ. Ayah 140, which I said that this was the conclusion of a number of verses above, where the evil practice of Meccan polytheists were discussed, that they, just like jinns, those who commit polytheism, those who do shirk, how they declare some things halal, some other things haram, and how they when it comes to making offerings, they make offerings to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they make offerings to other deities along with Allah Azza wa Jal. So those are هذا لله بزعمهم وهذا لشركائنا. They say this portion of our sadaqah من الحرث والأنعام, this portion of sadaqah belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal according to their claim. وَهَذَا لِشُرَكَائِنَا, and this is, the other is for our shuraka and for our partners. So that those partners which they make their offerings to other than Allah Azza wa Jal, that has been dealt with here. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَ جَنَّاتٍ مَعْرُوشَاتٍ. Allah is the one who creates all the harth, all the tillage is created by Allah Azza wa Jal. Everything, all the fruits and the vegetations, anything that grows from earth, it is all created by Allah. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَ. He alone is the one who created jannatin, the gardens, ma'rushatin, some of which are terrorized, وَغَيْرَ ma'rushatin, the others that are not terrorized. They are all created by Allah the Almighty. وَالنَّخْلَ وَالزَّرْعَ, and the date palms and the other was zar'a, the other tillage, this all created by Allah. مُخْتَلِفًا أُكُلُهُ, the tastes of which are variant, they vary, they differ. And وَالزَّيْتُونَ وَالرُّمَّانَ, olives and the pomegranates, these are all created by Allah Azza wa Jal. We have some vegetations, some fruits, some are specifically named here. Nakhl is named here, Zaytun is named here, and Ar-Rumman are named here. So out of all that Allah Azza wa Jal has created, and Nakhl and Zaytun and Rumman, they are one. Nakhl is the date palms. So dates, as a creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, they are, and in the date palms, the trees are created by Allah Azza wa Jal, along with all other forms of trees and all other forms of vegetation. The nakhl, and which is the date palms, are specifically mentioned. This is because this also for certain advantages that this tree has over the others. Arabs were very familiar with this tree. This is found in abundance in the region where the Qur'an was revealed, and the nutritious values of all these dates and zaytun and rumman, They don't need to be discussed in detail because these are things that are well documented. Zaytun as well. Zaytun is the olives, and the olive tree. The Prophet ﷺ specifically recommended that you should consume the olive oil, and you should use it as an oil for ointments, because it is a shajaratun mubarakah. It is a blessed tree. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So zaytun, this is zaytun, and zaytun olive tree is such a tree that every single part of zaytun tree, the olive tree, has very special, very beneficial use, including the trunk and the leaves and the tiny branches and the big branches and the cluster and the inner core. Everything of zaytun tree, olive tree, has very specific, very beneficial use. Rumman, same pomegranates, again, every part of this fruit has nutritious values, and very full of, and very rich in vitamins, in adding benefit to its consumer, the one who makes use of it. This is specifically, this may be the reason why these were specifically mentioned. Mutashabih and ghayra mutashabih, we talked about it briefly last week, that some of them they look alike and others do not look alike. And even when they look alike, their tastes are different. And some have different tastes. Mutashabihan wa ghayra mutashabih. Pears and apples, they do not have very different appearance. They're small, they look close enough. And there are other limes and oranges. They have some resemblance, some similarity. Kulu min thamarihi idha athmara. The day when these trees, when they produce their fruit, then you should eat from it. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ, and give its due right on the day of his harvesting these trees, these fruits. So وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ, and what is the haqq of these of these trees, or of these vegetation? What is their haqq? What is their due right? The right mentioned here by the scholars of tafsir are of two different types. One is wajib, huquq wajiba, and the others are huquq nafila. Huquq wajiba are those huquq which are essential, which are compulsory, like zakah, like someone who makes an oath with Allah Azza wa Jal, makes a specific pledge. So those become essential, compulsory, wajib. There are others which are just charity type, which are just additional, which are voluntary. So وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ, what kind of haqq does it refer to? Many look at the ayah and they say that this ayah was revealed in Makkah Mukarramah. And in Makkah Mukarramah, they argue that the details of zakah were revealed in Medina Munawwarah, not in Makkah, during the Madani phase of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life in Medina. And these were not the details of zakah were not revealed in Makkah Mukarramah. Hence, they are of the opinion that وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ refers to those rights of that kind of spending which are voluntary. So this is some of it. It's like is mentioned in Surah Al-Qalam, where there's a story as well. So what it means is that when the day you go to pick the fruit, and at the time, if some poor and the needy masakin, if they happen to be around, then share what you pick with them, and do not shut the doors and the gates of your orchards to the poor and to the masakin, and deprive them from any piece or any share whatsoever of the fruit. So this is what Allah Azza wa Jalla says, that do not do so, do not behave in this manner. When you pick the fruit, if there are some needy, some masakin, some passers-by, some others who happen to join you there, then give them some of it as well, and do not be very miserly and too penny pincher. Don't be like that. Give some of it to the fuqara and masakin that are present at the time. That is one tafsir. And the other tafsir is that atu haqqahu, even though the other tafsir is that atu haqqahu relates to essential and compulsory spending, which is wajib. So that wajib is there a wajib amount? Then scholars they say they differ on that. Majority are of the opinion that atu haqqahu means that when you pick up the fruit, when you pick up the day of harvesting, when you pick the grains on that day, you should give out anything that you pick. You should. One opinion is that you should give one ushr, which is the 10%. 10% of whatever you pick. What you pick, you must give it to the poor, to the masakin. Just like 2.5% is from the gold and silver. But the difference between gold and silver, zakat, and this ushr is that gold and silver, you give zakat of it once the year is complete. Somebody went and he had his first salary, okay, and he was poor, he had nothing. He moved into a city, or he grew up, he got his first job. So the day he picked up his first salary pack, say if it was more than the nisab of zakah, then zakah from that date until the date, and on the same exact date, the following year, zakat will become wajib on him. So let's say if he picked up his first check, or he received his first pay on the say 10th of Sha'ban. Now we're in the month of Sha'ban. So next year, the 10th of Sha'ban, zakat will become essential and compulsory on him. That is with gold and silver and other cash and trade, material trade stuff. But here, وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. When it comes to the vegetation, when it comes to the fruits, fruit or that which grows from earth, when it comes to these things, then their zakat is paid on the day of harvesting, on the day when you pick the fruit straight away. You don't wait for a year. On that very day, you must give the zakat of it. And the zakat of what grows from earth is, as I said, 10%. Now 10%, and what is the nisab of what grows from earth? The fruits and the other zara, as mentioned here. The nisab, according to Jumhur, is about 5 wasaqs, which I think come to around about 200 kilos, if I remember correctly. And the others say, Imam Hanifa rahimahullah is of the opinion that no. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ means it doesn't matter how the quantity does not really matter. It doesn't have to be that up to barely 5 wasaqs before zakat becomes wajib. It can be any amount. So whatever you have, even if it's 5 kilos, you must give 10% of it. Then again, depends on how it's been, the farms, or how the irrigation system. If it was dependent on natural rain, and as I say, ma saqathu as-sama, that which was watered by through the rain, natural rainfall, and that means one didn't have to invest on the irrigation system. Then in that case, because everything is a gift from Allah Azza wa Jal, all he did was that he prepared the farm, he prepared the land, he should give 10%. And if he had to pay for the irrigation system, if it was privately arranged, then obviously because he invested into that as well, so for him it's half of the 10%, which is 5%. So whether it is 10% or 5%, but it has to be given yawma hasadi, on the day of harvesting. Imam Hanifa rahimahullah, he draws his his fiqh and his opinion. He bases it on this ayah, وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ, the day on the day of its harvesting, on the very day, without mentioning any quantity. And in another ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu anfiqu min tayyibati ma kasabtum wa mimma akhrajna lakum min al-ard. So there Allah Azza wa Jal, so spend of the pure things that you earn and out of that which we produce for you from the earth. So there Allah Azza wa Jal does not mention any specific amount as the nisab. So whatever, and on because of that ayat, Allah is of the opinion that whatever grows from earth, it should be, the zakat should be paid from it, and the zakat there is 10% or 5%, as I've just explained. وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. This ayat, this part I have not been able to explain last week in detail, so I thought we should go back and probably try and start from here. وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا, and do not be extravagant. So do not spend in excess. Do not spend wastefully. إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Surely Allah Azza wa Jal does not like those who are extravagant in their expenditure. Here comes the subject of the etiquettes of spending. We all know the etiquettes of earning, that we must earn halal, but we do not know the etiquettes of spending. So we need to learn the etiquettes of spending too. This is a subject which does not get discussed as frequently, but it needs to be discussed. وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. One of the specific instructions in the Qur'an is to eat in moderation and consume in moderation and to spend in moderation. Allah, in another ayah, Allah says, "Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu." Eat and drink, but do not be wasteful, not in excess, do not be extravagant. So la tusrifu here again, hala is the same thing. In another ayah, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, "Inna Allah, Allahu Akbar, Inna al-mubadhirina kanu ikhwan al-shayateen." That those who spend wastefully, those who are extravagant in their expenditure, they are the brothers of shaitan. Because once you spend, well, if you become, if you spend extravagantly, then that kind of affects your ability to spend in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. That affects your ability to support the poor and the vulnerable, and this is something which Allah Azza wa Jal does not like. So Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to share his gifts that he sends your way with the poor and the needy, and he does not want you to spend in excess on your personal consumption and personal use. وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. وَمِنَ الْأَنْعَامِ حَمُولَةً وَفَرْشًا. And amongst the cattle are hamula, some that carry the load, وَفَرْشًا, and the others that are more like they are translation as well. Some are those that carry the loads, and the other are those that have that are small and closer to farsh, closer to the underlays. So some animals are created to carry loads, and others are more earthly type. They're more like closer to the earth. They're unable to carry loads. I explained last week. Hamula are the camel, are the oxen. They are bulls like Baqarah, mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. They are the ones that are able to carry loads. وَفَرْشًا تُثِيرُ الْأَرْض, as mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. They are the ones that carry loads. And the others are more closer to the earth. They are too small. They are closer to earth. Their skin is used to make the mats, okay, to sit on. They are, when it comes to slaughter, some animals are slaughtered standing up, like camels. So the camels, the way of slaughtering them, you do not need to knock them down. They just stand and you do nahar. They just use a very sharp object to cut their throat, which is, I think that they cut it from two places. So that is that is animals that are slaughtered in the standing position. وَفَرْشًا are the animals, they are made to lie down on the floor when it comes to slaughtering them. So in that, according to this tafsir, Baqarah will be part of Farshan. But the other tafsir that I did, Hamulatan, the ones that carry the load, وَفَرْشًا, and the ones that are used for more like mats type of thing, their skins are used, their hair are used. So that is like, that would be a reference to the goats and the sheep. Eat from that which Allah Azza wa Jal has granted you, which Allah Azza wa Jal has given to you. Now this is here. In the ayat above, it was said that previously the mention was what grows from earth. And here the mention is of the cattle. So what grows from earth, Allah Azza wa Jal has created the halal for you. You can eat whatever you like as long as you do not do israf, as long as you're not wasteful. Here Allah Azza wa Jal says, "Kulu mimma razaqakumullah," eat from that which Allah Azza wa Jal has granted you. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. What is the link between these two parts of the ayah? كُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. What is the link between these two phrases? First phrase says, كُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ, eat from that which Allah Azza wa Jal has given to you, which is granted you. That means, that explains the validity or the hillat or permissible nature of all these cattle. Okay, the domestic animals, the animals that are domesticated, that they are made halal for you, they are created for you. Because they are created for you, they are subservient all the time. Others are not domesticated. Lions and elephants, they live in the jungle, they live in the wild. So in order to, so they need to be tamed if you want to use them. Elephants are used sometimes by human beings as well for carrying loads. In fact, they were used in the wars previously. But they had to be tamed for that purpose. But the camels and the cows and the goats and sheep, they're naturally born subservient to human beings. Even a child carries the rope of a camel and makes camel walk behind it wherever he goes. So this is كُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah Azza wa Jal has granted these animals to you, these cattle to you, the domesticated ones. That is a provision from Allah to you. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Literally means, the meaning of it is that if shaitan tells you to do something, do not do it. So do not do what shaitan tells you to do. Or the footsteps of shaitan means shaitan kind of drifted away from the course of halal. So do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Do not drift away. Do not waver off to haram territory. Stay within halal. So eat from that which Allah has granted to you, and do not move away to haram. Stay within halal. That is, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, do not follow the footsteps of shaitan, because shaitan does not take into account the hudud of Allah Azza wa Jal, the limits and the ends that Allah Azza wa Jal has put in place. Shaitan does not recognize them. He just keeps on wavering off, going beyond them. So do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Do not fall into haram. This is something. So when it comes to consuming the provisions from Allah Azza wa Jal, then be mindful of the law of halal and haram. That's what he means. Be mindful of what Allah Azza wa Jal has made halal and what Allah Azza wa Jal has made haram. That this is the one tafsir. The other tafsir is that do not do it in excess. Similar to وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا in the ayat above. Do not eat too much. Eat from what Allah Azza wa Jal has given to you, but do not eat too much. Eat in moderation. Surely shaitan is a clear enemy to you. So when it talks about thereafter, the ayat goes to ثمانية أزواج. ثمانية أزواج, there are 8 pairs. ثمانية أزواج, there are 8 pairs. The first question here is, what is the yani 8 pairs? What is the yani this does not seem to, this doesn't appear to be a complete phrase. So this seems to be part of a phrase. So how is this a complete sentence? 8 pairs. 8 pairs is not a complete sentence. A definition of a sentence is that a sentence, when it's completed, it conveys to you some kind of information, some kind of an information in terms of some kind of demand or some kind of a statement which can be true or false. Here, if you say 8 pairs, now 8 pairs is not a complete statement because there's no demand in it, there is no instruction in it, and it can't be said as true or false. 8 pairs is just 8 pairs. So what is this word, this phrase connected with? So they say thamanita azwajin is connected with the phrase وَمِنَ الْأَنْعَامِ حَمُولَةً وَفَرْشًا. And from the cattle, Allah Azza wa Jal has created ثَمَانِيَةَ أَزْوَاجٍ, 8 pairs that are subservient to you. So this is the meaning of وَمِنَ ثَمَانِيَةَ أَزْوَاجٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal has created for you the 8 pairs. مِنَ الضَّأْنِ اثْنَيْنِ. So those 8 pairs that Allah Azza wa Jal has created for you, they are مِنَ الضَّأْنِ اثْنَيْنِ. Now, these are the domesticated animals. 8 pairs does not mean that they are 8 pairs. 8 pairs means that they are, according to our understanding, the way we count, 8 animals in pairs. So there are four pairs, 4 couples, if you want to call them, a male and female, and 4, then the total number leads to 8 of them, 8 animals. من الضأن اثنين, 2 are from the dha'n and 2 are from the ma'az. Dha'n is sheep and ma'az is the goat. So male from dha'n, from the sheep, there are 2, which is male and female, and from the goat are 2, which is a male and a female. So the total is 4 here. قُلْ آذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. Say, did Allah declare haram 2 males, or did he declare haram the 2 females? Or did he declare haram that which upon which is the ishtamala alayh? Ishtamala means something contains, something consists of, or something that Allah Azza wa Jal, what is in the wombs of the 2 females, what the wombs, arhamul unthayain, the rahams and the wombs of the 2 untha is female, of the 2 females, what it contains, ishtamal alayh, what it contains, what it has in it, what's inside the wombs of the 2. I'll come to that shortly. We've translated these ayats last week. We're just delving a little bit into tafsir today. And I promised that today we will do the tafsir of it. Now, what is the meaning of this? This is connected to the ayah. These ayats, remember that there were 4 scenarios mentioned last week, 4 false claims of four different false practices of the mushriks. They were mentioned in these verses here. One of them was that they would freely declare whatever they were tempted to, they would declare it halal, and they would declare the others as haram. So they kind of had a very open and very unrestricted approach to halal and haram. So they would determine halal and haram through their whims and desires. And that behavior is condemned in these verses. Others have pointed out that a certain leader of kuffar, of the mushriks, he came and he had a conversation with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this ayah this ayah was revealed to summarize that discussion which happened between Rasulullah and between that person whose name was Malik ibn Auf. Malik ibn Auf comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he raises his objection to him. And he says, O Messenger of Allah, you have totally rejected the law of our forefathers. So in our tradition, Makkah tradition from our forefathers, what we've learned is that there are certain animals which are halal and others are haram, and you can declare certain animals haram upon whomever you wish. So, but you've totally changed it, changed all that, and you've declared, you've abolished that practice. So don't you think that you're doing something which is new, or you're kind of drifting away from the established tradition? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded to him and he said, okay, let's look at what is it that your forefathers have declared as halal or haram. So what he talked about was the ayah in ma ja'ala Allahu min bahiratin wala sa'ibatin wala wasilatin wala hamil. Allah Azza wa Jal did not declare any animal as bahira or sa'iba or wasila or ham. So those were animals which people would leave. Sometimes they would stop milking them. Sometimes they would say this female has given birth to 10 animals, so it would be abandoned for the sake of their deities. Or they would, or an animal, a male animal was used to impregnate 10 females. So now it would be abandoned, a certain number, whatever number that they had. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you declare some male animals as a haram, you declare some female animals as a haram. What is it? What is it? What makes them unfit for consumption, or what makes them so sacred? Give me the justification. Is it the concept that they are male, or is it the concept that they are female? So if the reason is that because they are male, then every male should be haram. And if it's because they are females, then every female should be haram. Sometimes they would say that ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا. They would say what is in the bellies of these cattle, it is reserved for our men, our males, and it's haram for on our spouses. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the third argument, he said, so what makes it haram? Is it being in the womb? Is that what makes it haram? If that is the reason, then anything that comes from a womb should be haram. That would make all the cattle haram because they all come from the womb. So what is it? What's the reason of their hurmat, or what is the why do they become forbidden? So this was an objection that was raised by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to which he had no answer, to which he had no explanation. He couldn't explain what was the reason of certain animals being declared haram, which we mentioned in the ayat. He couldn't logically explain their practice. When he was unable to, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's response, he silenced him. He could not speak. He couldn't explain. At that time he went quiet and said, "Okay, fine. I'm not able to explain the logic behind it. You tell us. We'll listen to you." So that is mentioned here. The Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal included that conversation was Rasul, the Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal revealed it in the Qur'an Kareem as well. So here Rasulullah says, "Ad-dhakaraini haram." When you declare certain male as haram, then is it because they are male, or is it because they are female, or is it because they were in the womb? What is the cause? What is the trigger? What is the reason of their forbidden nature? So نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين. Speak to me with evidence. Ilmin means an evidence, with a dalil, with a reason. In kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful. And obviously he had no explanation, so he went quiet. وَمِنَ الْإِبْرِ We'll continue later. We'll continue to the second ayat, but there is another interesting part in this ayah which needs to be looked at, and that is harrama. Harrama is part of the argument. Harrama is the verb for which the doer, which is linked with Allah the Almighty. Harrama means, did Allah declare haram 2 males, or did he declare haram the 2 females? So harrama, Allah declared haram. There's a pronoun that is referring to ma razaqakumullah. So what it entails, what is the implication of the ayat, is that the authority to declare haram or the authority to declare halal lies solely and purely with Allah Azza wa Jal. And anyone who gives that authority to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal, they in essence are committing shirk. So the right of tahreem or the right of tahleel, haram or halal, lies purely and solely with Allah Azza wa Jal. If you give such authority to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jal, even though you do not worship them, but because of giving them this right of haram and halal, you, in essence, you fall into the territory of shirk, and you become guilty of doing shirk, because you're giving them authority which is reserved only for Allah the Almighty. So that is something which harama, which the word harama here entails, and it is again it's a refuting that the claims that they had made. وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث. Oh, I'm sorry, I think we lost that share. That's wrong bit. Just one second. وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر. They said that these cattle and this tillage is hijr, this forbidden, it's haram. لا يطعمها إلا من نشاء. No one should eat it except those that we give permission to. Bizamim, according to their claim, not in reality. So لا يطعمها إلا من نشاء. Nobody is allowed to eat it except that whom we approve. So this statement or this claim is a statement of shirk, because only Allah has the authority to declare haram or halal. It's not only for the mushriks, it's for us as well. We have to be very careful, and that we need to exercise caution when we give a statement that this particular ingredient is halal and this particular ingredient is haram. There are people who just kind of, without any they just without any authority, they declare things haram. Coca-Cola is haram, Pepsi is haram, iron brew is haram, and other items they declare haram, whereas the learned scholars, the ulama, people who, the academics, Muslim academics, they consider them to be halal, perfectly okay to be consumed. So if you give such a verdict, you have to be very careful, because you do not want to declare something haram when it isn't, or halal when it isn't. So this, giving such fatwa, giving such verdicts is something that need to be looked at closely, and they need to be scrutinized properly, because giving a wrong fatwa in this regard is a serious business. And not only issuing fatwa is a serious business, taking such fatwa into consideration is also a serious business. You need to be careful that what you treat as a binding fatwa, you make sure that it comes from people with established credentials, and you don't just give such authority to every common person, every passerby, because this is something that's a delicate matter. So harama is ultimately the right of haram and halal. It's in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal. Once this is understood, I think I previously pointed it out as well, many people, those who do not have the chance to study the Qur'an or Sunnah properly, they often demand that ulama should declare certain things halal, certain other things haram. Interest, for instance, riba, because it has become such an intrinsic and essential part of the modern economy that there are constant calls, again, for many decades now. Alhamdulillah, our elders, they dealt with it, that this element of interest should be, and it's called as commercial interest. So they say that this should be considered, this should be declared halal. We can't do this. But if Allah Azza wa Jalla declares something haram, even if somebody declares it halal, he will be in Jahannam. And those who take such fatwa or such comments as legitimate, they will also follow them over there. Because if Allah has declared something haram, it will stay haram until the day of judgment. And if Allah Azza wa Jalla has declared something halal, it will remain Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because the hadith says clearly that, remember, that إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ مِثْلَ مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهِ. If Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam declare something haram, it will remain haram until the day of judgment. And if they declare something halal, it will remain halal until the day of judgment. We can't really interfere with it. We can't mess with it. We can't play with it. So the right of tahrim and tahleel, totally in totality, lies with Allah, the Almighty. Nobody else has such an authority. So when we ask for, the question here is that these animals that you declared haram, O people of Makkah, where is the evidence to say, to prove that indeed Allah has declared them haram? Since Allah did not declare them haram, they would remain halal. نبئوني بعلم, inform me, tell me with evidence if you are truthful. وَمِنَ الْإِبِلِ اثْنَيْنِ وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ اثْنَيْنِ. And from the camel are two, again, these are 8 pairs, as were mentioned up there. And from the camels are 2, male and females. And from the cows are 2, males and females. It does not mean that any other animal that is closer to these animals is not halal either. Like buffaloes in some countries, they are also halal, depending that they are similar to the cows, they have the similar functions, then they would also be treated as buffaloes. Ithnain. They are domesticated, they have the milking quality, they just like. So that is, they would be halal as well. Did Allah declare the 2 males as haram, or did He declare the 2 females? Or that which is contained by which the wombs of the 2 females contain, is it that which is haram? Obviously, Dhakarain, Allah did not, nothing is haram because it's male or is female, or that it came from a womb. That's not the reason. When it's not the reason, then what is the other reason? Why is it that an animal was halal until yesterday, and today, because it's given to the 10th baby, now how does it become haram overnight? And similarly with the males. So if by nature, through the essence, they were halal, then they would remain halal. أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا. Now that's up there says نَبِّئُونِي بِعِلْمٍ. Give us the evidence. Here it says أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. Is there any witness? If there's any witness who would testify that this law comes from Allah. So, or were you present? أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. Or were you present when Allah instructed you of this? وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah Azza wa Jal gave you instructions. He commanded you such bihada, with these commands. And was anybody present when these commandments were given? Obviously, they didn't come from Allah, so there is no evidence, no witness statement here. So since there is no evidence, no witness account, then why is it that you insist that we should accept your traditions, which truly have no ground or no foundation? فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Then who would be more unjust than that individual who fabricated a lie against Allah Azza wa Jal in order to lead astray people without having any knowledge? So just blind following of traditions and thinking them to originate from Allah Azza wa Jal, regardless of any such evidence or regardless of any such testimony of witness testimony, this is unfair, this is unjust. In fact, there isn't any greater injustice than insisting that these foundless laws, these traditions that have no foundation, baseless traditions, should be imposing them upon people in order to take them away from the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is wrong. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawma al-zalimin. Surely those who are unjust, the zalims, the wrongdoers, Allah Azza wa Jal does not guide them. They are not given hidayat. They do not receive guidance. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. So this is now the refutation to their claims. In fact, now Allah Azza wa Jal, having talked about the law of halal, thereafter Allah Azza wa Jal talks about what is haram. قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُ. Inshallah, from this ayat onwards, we'll continue after the short break. Let's just take about 10 minutes break. I'll just quick drink of water and then inshallah we'll continue. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, we'll continue from where we left. Allahu Akbar. Okay, here we are at number 145. Oh, size very big. Oops, sorry. Okay, here we are. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قل لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما على طاعم يطعمه إلا أن يكون ميتة أو دما مسفوحا أو لحم خنزير فإنه رجس أو فسقا أهل لغير الله به فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فإن ربك غفور رحيم. صدق الله العظيم. Say, لا أجد, I cannot find, I do not find in the wahi, in the revelation that has been sent to me, فيما أوحي إلي, in that which has been revealed to me. I do not find in that which was revealed to me anything forbidden, muharraman, a haram thing. I do not find anything haram in the wahi that's given to me, ala ta'imin, upon someone who's eating. Ta'im, a person who is ta'ama yata'amu, means the one who's consuming, who's eating something, the eater of a thing, yata'amuhu, that he eats. So in terms of food, stuff, I do not find anything haram in the revelation that's given to me, except that it was an yakuna maytatan, that it was a dead thing, or flowing blood, daman, or blood that is flowing, or lahma khinzirin, or the meat and the flesh of a swine, of pigs, lahma khinzirin, فَإِنَّهُ رِجْسٌ, surely that is filth, or fisqan uhilla lighayri bih, or it be an act of disobedience that uhilla lighayri llahi bih, that is dedicated to anything other than Allah, to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jalla. So these things are haram. These types of foods are haram. Mayta, a dead animal, or flowing blood, or lahma khinzir, or ma uhilla lighayri llahi bih, whatever was dedicated at the time of slaughter to a being, to a deity other than Allah Azza wa Jalla. فَمَنِ اسْتُرَّ, whoever is then compelled, without غَيْرَ بَاغٍ, without desiring, or وَلَا عَادٍ, or without transgressing, then surely Allah Azza wa Jalla, your Lord, is Ghafur Rahim, the most forgiving and the most merciful. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. This is an interesting ayah, which I think if we can manage to finish by the end of the day today, then I'd be very pleased. Because over here, there's an interesting discussion, and that interesting discussion here is لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما على طائم يطعمه, that I do not find anything haram in terms of food stuff. Whereas we know, so in terms of food stuff, this ayah talks about only a handful of things, about 4 things here. Number 1 is a dead animal. Number 2 is dam masfuhan, flowing blood. Number 3 is lahma khinzir. And number 4 is ma uhilla li ghayri llahi bi, whatever was dedicated to anyone other than Allah Azza wa Jalla. So only these 4 things are considered to be haram here. Whereas we all know that there are other types of animals as well which are haram. If you want, I can take you back to the start of Surah Al-Ma'idah. I think it's verse number 3 or 4, which talks about the verse number 3 or 4 talks about a number of animals, حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم والمنخنقة والموقوذة والمتردية والنطيحة وما أكل السبع. So المنخنقة, الموقوذة, المتردية, النطيحة. So المنخنقة, the one that is يعني the one that suffocated to death. Okay, someone kind of presses his throat and it kind of it suffocates it. That such an animal would not be halal. And similarly, the one that rolls down from the top of a mountain and falls headlong and it dies as a result won't be halal. And the one that is hit by another animal, the two animals had a fight, one was killed, that will not be halal. And the one that was hunted by other carnivorous animals, it will not be halal. So there's a list of other things which are clearly declared to be haram. But in this ayat, the Almighty Allah, the structure of the ayat is, the way the ayat is phrased is that it says, لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما إلا. The only haram things in my sharia, in the sharia that is given to me, are the following. So, as if you look at the translation again, I do not find in that which is revealed to me anything haram on a person eating except the following four things. So what about the rest? So many, all the carnivore animals are lions, tigers, the wild animals, the beasts in the jungle, they're all forbidden, they're almost haram. And also, even amongst the domesticated animals, there are, I just gave you a list earlier, the ones that are strangled to death, the ones that roll down from heaven, that fall from some height headlong, the ones that are struck and got hit by the other animals, they are all haram. But here only four are listed. So there's a clear tension here. There seems to be, this ayah appears to contradict with the other ayats. So that tension is resolved by the scholars of Tasir in different ways. One is that you link it with the preceding verses. Okay. Now, preceding verses here talk about, if I go back to the verses above, and I've talked about it now, just before the break, we were talking about the established traditions of people in Mecca, the mushriks, or the pagan tradition that prevailed at the time in Mecca, that amongst the domestic animals, the domesticated animals, the cattle at home, there were certain that they would declare haram, and the others they would declare halal. So amongst them, the hukm here, the ayat says that amongst the cattle, domesticated animals, by default, these are the only animals that are haram. Then if an animal has a certain experience which may render it impure, then that impurity stems from an external factor. It's not an intrinsic value, the inbuilt feature of the animal itself. So if an animal, say for instance, it gets covered in some kind of impure substance, and then you happen to put your place on the skin of the animal, your hand will become impure, not because the animal is impure, but because the substance that's poured on the animal was impure. Someone dropped wine on a sheep, so emptied the bottle, so the sheep is now drenched in that wine, which is haram, which is impure. So if you place your hand on such a sheep, on such a skin, and your hand gets wet because of the effect of the wine, then your hand will be impure, not because of the sheep, but because of the wine on top of it. Similarly, the animals that are declared haram in the ayat that I quoted from Surah Al-Ma'idah, strangled to death, falls headlong, so they become haram not because they were haram, but because an external occurrence and incident happened with them. So two things here. Firstly, this ayah talks only about the cattle, not about the life in general. Okay, life in general, tends to be something to do with Allahu Akbar. Even life in general, if you took that into account, in general, people's habit is that the beasts in the jungle, nobody eats them. At least that was the culture where these verses were revealed. The beasts in the jungle are understood to be haram anyway. We are now talking about the cattle which live amongst us. This is amongst it, clearly haram are only these, what I mentioned here. But then the question comes from about the horses. What about the horses? What about the donkeys? Okay. So when these verses were revealed, donkeys and horses were obviously their hukum was not mentioned. Their hukum was, again, this is ayat that is revealed in Makkah Mukarramah. Remember, in Medina Munawwara life, donkeys were haram until the Battle of Khaybar. Donkeys were consumed as meat substance. In fact, even as the Battle of Khaybar was happening, some Sahaba were cooking the meat of donkeys. But as soon as that instruction came from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, naha an luhum al-humur al-ahliyya, the animals, the donkeys that are domesticated, the ones that are kept at home, they are haram. The ones that live in the jungle, like zebras, they are fine. But the ones that live at home, those donkeys were declared haram. Because of it, some say that the donkey meat is makruh. Others generally they treat it as totally as something that's avoided. So at the time when these verses were revealed, these were the only things that were haram. And again, this relate to only al-an'am, okay, the domesticated animals, and it does not relate to the others, because others are discussed in the other ayats. This is the one, and there are about at least two more explanations, but I think we'll just keep to them because this is the simplest one. The next is illa an yakuna maytatan. So then it talks about what is haram. The first is the dead animals. All the animals that die the natural death, they become haram. So even if they were otherwise halal, they would become haram. So much so, I think even the fish, samak al-tafi is avoided, which just dies natural death. So if the sea gets polluted and a lot of fish die as a result, then that fish is not eaten. That fish is avoided. Okay, so that is generally that's samak al-tafi, because it can be difficult. However, if it's not because of any such yani, Allahu Akbar, if it's not because of any external that kind of illness, then if you pick the fish, if you catch fish, you don't need to slaughter it, and it dies when you're taking it out of the water, and it dies, then it is halal. This is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one hadith is reported to have said that all maytas, the maytas are haram, but two types of maytas are halal. Two types of mayt which you do not need to slaughter, they are halal. One, he said, is fish, which you do not need to slaughter, and the other he's mentioned was al-jarad, which is locusts. Now, locusts are a type of insects, but Shariat Islam has declared them halal, and I think same was in the Jewish law, that locusts are treated as halal, and they are in Islam as well. They are treated as halal, but it's not essential, it's not compulsory and forced to eat them. If you do not like them, you do not need to eat. But as the law stands, they are treated as halal. So amongst mayta, everything, all the maytas are haram. If an animal dies natural death, even if it was otherwise halal, it becomes haram. أو دمًا مسفوحًا, or flowing blood. Flowing blood is haram. Flowing blood that is yani flows in the veins in the body. It is, if it comes out and if it touches your body, then that is according to, it is treated as impure. But its consumption, drinking or kind of cooking, that it should be drained from at the time of slaughter. Nothing should remain at that time when it's being drained from the slaughtered animal. Anything that comes out, that's all haram. However, later when an animal is properly slaughtered, and then you get to prepare the meat for cooking, if you find traces of blood in the meat, then it is treated as halal. It is treated as permissible, but recommendation is to wash the meat properly, so any such blood traces are or they're also washed. So although masfuhan, flowing blood in the body of the animals, is haram, and at the time of slaughter it should be fully drained. This is why when the certain HMC Halal Muslim Committee, Halal Monitoring Committee, they talk about stunned meat. So stunning is a valid practice or invalid practice. The argument against stunning is that it leaves, when an animal is mentally fully awake and alert, when you slaughter the animal, then it drains the blood. The flow of the blood is strong and everything gets. What about the eggs? Sometimes it appears a little red dot or something similar. If it's a small little red dot, then it may, you don't need to, you can remove that area, but it's not flowing. It's a blood clot. It's in terms of hillat and hurmat. I'm not talking about whether it should be eaten or not. If you can remove that bit, but it's not haram. That tiny bit is not haram. So that is about the dam masfuhan. We're talking about, mashallah. Is that okay? So dam masfuhan, so flowing blood is haram. So the argument against stunning animals at the time of slaughter is that it prevents the flow of blood from the bodies. Then there's also a discussion here about blood transfusion. So blood transfusion is when someone, because of an injury, loses a lot of blood and they have to be kind of injected, they have to be given blood from an external source. There are blood donations, blood banks as well, where they keep a ready supply of fresh blood, which is then kind of given to those who are in need in hospitals. So is that treatment halal? Because the masfuhan is haram. So the fatwa here by many scholars, by scholars here, they say that the masfuhan, blood transfusion, is halal as a mechanism, as a practice to save lives. So to save life, if you do the blood transfusion, that is perfectly fine, because the idea here is فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. If someone's compelled, as long as the desire is not to, as long as the reason is not that he wants to fulfill a desire of his, or he's not kind of going beyond the necessity, then surely your Lord is Ghafurur Rahim. So blood transfusion is only permissible as long as it's needed to save life. So if the life is safe, then thereafter, if it's just to make it more healthy, make it more strong, etc., those kind of reasons, blood transfusion would not be halal for those kind of intentions. So is the dam masfuhan, blood transfusion, only halal when it's needed to save lives. Oh, lahma khinzir. Lahma khinzir is totally haram. All parts of khinzir, whether they are skin, whether they are hair, whether they're bones, every part of khinzir is haram, is not permissible. So there was lately a discussion on the lahma khinzir, the heart of pig, used as a transplant. Is it permissible? Again, the criteria here is from if it's just to save life and there's no other alternative, then maybe it's permissible. Otherwise, it isn't. Surely this is all this lahma khinzir is rijs, is filth, is impure. It's not halal. Selling blood is not permissible. So Dam masfuh, Maita is haram, Dam masfuh is haram, Lahm al-Khinzir is haram. And also an act of disobedience where an animal is dedicated to something other, a deity other than Allah Azza wa Jal. Uhilla li ghayri Allahi bih is something that is dedicated to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. Any animal which is slaughtered for someone other than Allah. So at the time of slaughter, if you say this animal is being slaughtered as an offering to someone other than Allah, then that would be haram. Okay. So, and unfortunately, whether it's done by a Muslim or it's done by a non-Muslim, eating that meat would be haram. So even if it's been even if it's been slaughtered at the time of slaughter, when someone says Bismillah, but then say that this animal is being dedicated and it's being slaughtered as an offering to whatever, whoever that is, to a shrine or whatever, then it would be haram. Whatever is earmarked to anyone other than Allah as an offering to anyone other than Allah is haram. Even if the time of slaughter, Bismillah is pronounced. However, if you slaughter an animal as a sadaqah for your son who is critically ill in hospital, and to spare his life, to save his life, you give a sadaqah, and an animal is slaughtered in the name of Allah, and then the meat is given to the fuqara, masakin, and you do it as a sadaqah on behalf of your sick child, to please Allah Azza wa Jal, to accept to sadaqah, then that is fine. That will be halal. That is permissible. The meat is halal. Everything is halal because the animal is being offered to Allah the Almighty, is being slaughtered in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal. The desire is that this sadaqah, the benefit of it should go to the sick child. That is perfectly fine. That's permissible. There's nothing wrong with it. Similarly, if you did a qurbani on behalf of your parents, so your parents passed away, or a friend passed away, or your ustaz, your teacher passed away, or somebody passed away, or somebody is there, and you want to do qurbani on their behalf. So you have a sister who lives in wherever, and you happen to be in Mecca, and in Mecca, as you did qurbani of yourself, you decided to do a qurbani for your sister because she's been very kind to you, and you want to say thank you to her. So you do an extra qurbani on her behalf and let her know that you've done a qurbani on her behalf in Makkah Mukarramah, and the sawab is conveyed to her on her behalf, and that's also fine as well, because slaughtering is for the sake of Allah, the offering is for the sake of Allah. Slaughtered in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal is just the thawab or the benefit that you are dedicating to your sister. So those kind of slaughters are halal. However, if you slaughter directly which you would only do to shrines or to the false deities, then that would not be permissible. We talked about some kind of offerings that are done in the month of Rajab, and they say this is for Ja'far Sadiq rahimahullah. I think we talked about it a few weeks back. So that even though that's not a slaughter, but that's if somebody slaughtered an animal with that kind of intention, then that would be haram too. However, if someone's compelled without fulfilling his desires, or without doing more than what is needed. Blood transfusion, say for instance 1 liter, 1.5 liter, that was sufficient, but you unnecessarily took it to a greater extent. Lahm al-Khinzir, may Allah protect us all from ever falling into a situation like that. Rather than just having what was barely necessary, you do more than that. You eat haram more than what was barely necessary, then that won't be forgiven. That will not be halal. فَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. If it's done in a state of distress, then the law slightly changes. وعلى الذين هادوا حرمنا كل ذي ظفر ومن البقر والغنم حرمنا عليهم شحومهما إلا ما حملت ظهورهما أو الحوايا أو ما اختلط بعظم ذلك جزيناهم ببغيهم وإنا لصادقون. Now, the law of halal and haram for ما أوحي إلي, in what is revealed to me in the Qur'an, or the instructions given to me in my Sharia, is mentioned in Ayah 145. But then at the same time, as the subject is fresh in mind, there's another favor to this, which is given to this ummah, is mentioned by talking about the law of halal and haram, which was given to the nations, to the people before us. So Allah says, and this was the reason there was different. And upon those, and upon those who were Jewish, the Jews, the Old Testament, upon the Jewish, حرمنا, we forbade and we declare forbidden كل ذي ظفر, every animal with claws. Every animal with claws was forbidden upon the Jewish. ومن البقر, and from amongst the cows and the sheep, حرمنا عليهم, we forbade upon them, we declare forbidden upon them شحومهما, their fat. The fat in the berries of the baqar and ghanam was totally forbidden for the Jewish. إلا ما حملت ظهورهما, except certain type of fat. That which ما حملت ظهورهما, which was carried on their backs. So the meat on their backs, if you had fat in it, then that fat would be permissible, that was made halal. Awil hawaya, or that fat which was connected to, which was on the entrails of the animals, that was considered, treated as permissible and not haram. And the third type of fat which was halal was that which was mixed with, مختلطة, that was joined with, attached to, عظم, the bones. So anything that was on the bones, any fat that was on the bones, so that was attached to the bones, that was also made permissible and halal. ذلك جزيناهم. So their law is different. Every animal with claws was made haram. So their law was slightly, somewhat different, and it was, Allah says, this was a punishment for them. This was that life was made difficult. ذلك جزيناهم. That's how we paid back. That was their recompense. That's how they were paid back because of for their rebellion. So this is how their rebellion was paid back by Allah, by us. This is how we paid them back. جزيناهم. We paid them back for their rebellion, that we made life difficult for them, and we made things that had nothing impure in them, as intrinsically it was made haram, because the intention, the idea was to make life hard on them. وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ, and surely we are the truthful. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Now this ayat talks about the Jewish law, and for them, as says, جَزَيْنَاهُمْ بِبَغْيِهِمْ, these, as a punishment, these fat stuff, the fat within the meat was made haram, except that which was on the back of the animals, and which was connected to the intestines, or which was connected to the bones. This is what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith as well. But then they rebelled against Allah Azza wa Jal later, and rather than practicing the law as it was given to them, what they then did is that they would cook the fat of the acquired from these animals until it would melt into some kind of sticky substance like an oil, and they would then use that oil, and they'd say, we're not using fat, we're using the oil. Inshallah, we'll talk about the adhans on for Asr Salah. So Asr is not far away, just about 5-7 minutes away. Inshallah, we'll continue from this ayah next week. We'll revisit ayah 146. Inshallah, we'll continue. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for joining today. Assalamu alaikum.